So you're going to put your template in the corner by the folded edge, and you're going to have your 3 inches parallel to the bottom and your 2 1/4 inch here. So let me just mark this. Doesn't matter what you mark it with. Let's see if that's marking. I'm just marking it with a pen. Come over to the other side. You want the 3 inch going this way because you've got this extra 1/4 inch right here. Okay, then you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut out those 2 boxes that you just made. Okay, here we go. Alright, so to make your box corners, you're going to pull it like this and flatten it with that seam in the middle. Now you can open the seam if you want, or you can move it to one side. Since this is a box, I don't think you have to be too careful with that. Okay, now I'm just going to draw, I'm going to sew straight across this line. Here we go. Now I always want this to be a really firm seam, so I always back stitch the whole thing. Alright. Here you go. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Since I had so much trouble back stitching that, I'm just going to do it again. All right. So now, turn it right side. And you have your basic basket. Now I would suggest going back and ironing it along all 4 sides of the bottom, and you have a nice crisp bottom. Now some people like to cut a piece of cardboard and put it in the bottom, which is a good idea, but I'm not going to do that for this one because I'm making it for a diaper changing table, and she may need to wash this, so I'm not going to put the cardboard in. You're going to repeat all of these steps with the lining. Now we're going to do the same thing with the lining that we did with the box, the basket. Alright, so I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam down the sides. tension needs to be adjusted. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing in the corners, but this time the measurements are 2 3/4 by 2 1/2. Our lining is slightly smaller so that it will fit in there really good. So let me mark my corners. Remember, you want the short side up against the seam, and the long side parallel to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to cut this out. See, I'm going to cut it out. And get that real straight. And we're going to flatten it. Get this seam. You can see the crease. You can see the crease right here. This is the middle. I'll line up the seam with the middle. And then the cat was sitting in the basket. So along that edge. And as I said, I like to sew double, because this is a seam that gets a lot of stress. Okay, there's one side. And then we'll do the second side. Get that seam centered. If you want to press that seam open, that's fine. I don't usually bother with it, but once. And then I'm just going to flip it over and sew it again. Okay. And now we've got our lining. I don't worry about creasing the lining because it's going to be in the basket anyway. So we're going to put, in a moment, we're going to put the lining in the basket. But first we have to make our handles. For the handles, let's read this one. I pressed under about 1/4 inch and I pressed it in half. And then I'm going to take the batting and just stick it inside and fold it over. You do that with both of them. Oh, this one is a little I made my seam a little too big. Here we go. If it doesn't fit, you can trim it down or do whatever you need to do to make it fit. Now I'm going to sew it right along the edge here. Sew it shut. Just a nice edge stitch. I'll get the other one. Move this batting down a little bit. Okay. Here we go. And then Also down the other side. Along the edge. And then I like to sew something in the middle, so I'm just gonna kind of just sew a curvy line. You can do a straight line or whatever you want to do. And there you've got your handles. Now if you use the cotton webbing, you don't need to bother with this step. Alright, so I'm going to set my machine on baste. Okay, the next step is we're going to set the lining inside the basket and match up my seams. Put one going one way and one going the other way and clip it. What I like to do is clip the side seams first. And then I can clip along the inside. Okay, and then I baste it on. Get it down here. Okay, so we'll baste it on. Doesn't matter where you start, none of this is going to show. Okay, so let me show you something. My lining is just a little too small, and I'm going to have a little pleat right here. But I'm not going to worry about that because the cuff is going to cover that up. So if you have some pleats, don't worry about it. Won't make a bit of difference. In fact, I'm thinking that pattern may need to be adjusted back to for the lining to be the original size of the outside, because I've had to pleat it several times. Okay, so I've got that basted on. Next, we're going to baste. We're going to baste the handles. So what you want to do, you want to make sure your handles aren't twisted. Let's see, see if if y'all can see that. I've got them like a 1/2 inch away from the seam. I'm going to clip them. And baste it. Now you don't have to do all this basting. You can put all the layers together in one step and clip it. But I just find it so much less likely to mess up if you baste it. So you can see I've got that basted in there. Let's baste the other side. See, when I pull that up, the handle's gonna be like that. Okay, let's get this handle. Okay, I've got it like a 1/2 inch from either side of the seam. Clip it and baste it. Okay, so now you've got the basket, the lining, and the handles, and now all we have to do is make the cuff. Okay, now we're ready for our final step. We are going to take our cuff. You make a tube with your cuff, and I did press this one open. And you're going to iron it in half lengthwise. I suggest you iron it before you make the tube, and that way your sides will just meet up easier. It's just easier that way. So we're going to take our clips. We're going to clip the cuff to the inside. And I marked the center with my iron. Look at the center right there. And then I'm going to clip it all the way around. And I clip it pretty good. Now I made my cuff the same fabric as the lining because this is such a weird color green, I couldn't find anything else. But it's really cute if the cuff is completely different from the lining and the outside fabric. Okay, so now we're going to sew around the edge. And what I do is just let's see, let me get it where you can see it. I do it just a hair more than 1/4 inch. Just to make sure you've got everything caught up in there. Like halfway between 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch. Now this way of making a cuff is so much easier that I'm going to use this method when I make the stockings this year. The cuff will just fold over and you don't have to worry about raw edges and turning under and any of that stuff. Okay, so we sewed that all the way around. I'm going to trim my threads. And you see we got this ugly edge all the way around, but it doesn't matter because all we're going to do is we're going to take that cuff and fold it over. And then if you want to press it, that would probably help. I haven't pressed the sides or the bottom of this. And then you've got your cuff. Now let me press this and I'll show you one more thing. I'll do it before I press it. What I suggest you do, let me get this. You take your handles and I would okay. I would sew them in the upright position. Sorry. Let me get the other side. Here we go. I hope y'all can see this. Okay. Okay. Now, you turn your cuff. Move this up. You turn your cuff. Your handles should pop up, and I suggest that you iron all this. And that's it. You have finished the basket.